stool out because my students know this is what I like to do. But I'm going to go back
There is
to
how
it in a
much
minute.
is left on.
Just want to go through a few things
I don't know if it's recording.
ahead of time that I think are important. You know, when I go through this topic tonight, I'm going to try to find some balance. I know there's people in this room that know a whole lot about this. There's people who know some. There's probably some people who don't know anything. And if I go through some things that you're already aware of, you know, that's fine. But I will have some new things to talk about tonight too, obviously. There's been a lot of things happening with this. The documents released, the national attention. It's certainly brought it to the forefront. Of course, the anniversary coming up, always there. There are many layers to this story. I mean, this is something, of course, I teach my class, PLS 2105, which is, I give you the number because I teach it on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the fall. At 11 o'clock in the morning, we got a good class in there. Some of them probably here tonight. And, there's my plug for it, okay? The documents, yeah, there's been things released, and probably also know there's been many in terms of what's called redactions. In other words, information is still held back. I mean, we'll talk about that tonight. And I think that's unfortunate, you know, but it is what it is. In the name of national security, of course. 54 years later, I can get sarcastic about that. I think what's been released, I would say, and I'll show you some things tonight, some of you probably already seen. I'll try to dig a little deeper on the things maybe you have seen. I would say are more insightful as opposed to revelatory, okay? If that makes any sense to you. Although I think there's some important things here to look at. I think some things that people make the mistake, I think, of sometimes thinking there's like some Rosetta Stone, to use a history thing, or a holy grail to solving the Kennedy assassination. They put all the build-up and then, well, okay, where's it at? Maybe it's there, but it's come out in pieces. I think I would make that argument. There's so many things about this case that are so unbelievable in so many ways that if we took the time to be discerning enough and to look at this thing in the depth of the things that have come out over the years, you might see your answer, okay? But we'll get to that more. President Trump had made a comment about, you know, that everything by April should be released other than names of living folks. And there's not many of those still left. Now, will he hold to that? Will they go back? I mean, the documents that just been released, are they going to go back and unredact? I'll show you some of those tonight. I just don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm holding a conference in Washington this spring. We're going to look at that very thing. So I'll just throw that out at you too. I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and this is the tough part. I've got so much stuff here to talk about. I mean, I could do 5 days on this, or a semester, like some of my students know. I know there's such a tendency to want to ask a question, get into debate, get in an argument. You might not agree with everything I got to say. You probably won't. But if you could, I just would like to stay on track, and please save your questions for the end. I will stay as long as you want to stay, to ask questions. In fact, even after that, for those of you that might want to be a little more social, we're planning on having some wings at Babalu's later on this evening. If anybody would like to join us for that, I know you, unless you're 21, sorry, students. But we got that planned too, so if you'd like to join me, wings on me tonight later. But for the time, we'll stick around. I would like to take a break at about halfway through, because, you know I'm just like you. I can't, you know, I tell my wife, man, I'm 20 minutes at church, I'm getting antsy. So I don't want you to have to sit there for 90 straight. So we will take a short break in the middle of this, and I might entertain some questions then. I want to get up and use the restroom, and then we'll come back at it, okay? So, I will have to go fast. I hope I'm not going fast enough here. I hope I am. I'd like to thank my son, Ryan Denton, who put this awesome PowerPoint together. He gets all credit for that. And also help from Eric, my outstanding assistant, who's done so much work for me, you can't believe. Mike Kahn, who's been so supportive, our dean. Linda Scheidler, who helped tonight. Rodney Raines, our president's been always supportive of the things I've tried to do. So there we go. Let's go ahead. Let's get going here. Okay, and I've got obviously a lot of slides, and just make sure I get this thing rolling. Of course, why are we here? Why are we here 54 years later? Why are we talking about this? And that would be a question for a lot of the younger folks, I think, too. And a couple of things, yes, this is an open wound on the American conscience, and unresolved questions in our past. I think the fact that we never got a good resolution to this story in the beginning, and things just keep bubbling to the surface. And maybe the answers we get we're not satisfied with. I mean, that might be part of the answers. And obviously, JFK was a man of tremendous, this kind of respect and memories of this whole thing. Still keep it in the forefront. Enough things come and we are confronted with. And I think this is one important point I make. It's also a unique event because I think there's this, what I call a gap, a variance between the institutional portrayal of this event, the idea that a lone assassin, a lone nut assassin killed the President of the United States, yet consistently we've seen 60 to 90% of the American public, that's a wide variance, but generally from the weekend of the assassination, the moment that Jack Ruby went in and shot Lee Oswald in front of a bunch of police officers and silenced him, and a lot of Americans said, well, what's going on here? Is there something more? And the next question, why does it still matter? Why, I think getting our history right is important. I'm a history guy. Whether it's 2 years, 20, 50, it's important we get our history right. We're an open democracy. We're not this, a fascist state where we project propaganda about our past. I think it's important that we do that. And there's no statute of limitations on justice. I don't think so, anyway. So, and I think what we've gotten to the point in our society, I think this is very important too, that how we view conspiracy. What's our attitude about it? I think that by the definition of conspiracy, have it there, an act of criminal treachery by a combination of individual forces. That's the technical definition. But what does conspiracy come to mean in our society? Usually it's more of a generalized assumption that of these people that believe in baseless fantasies and paranoia or delusions that are promoted by fringe types and embraced by easily duped segments of our population. And there may be plenty of that. I mean, hey, if you want to get on Alex Jones this weekend or this week, you're probably going to see some of that, right? Or please don't get mad at me looking at Alex Jones. But yeah, there's plenty of that going around. Plenty of false stories, fake events, fake news. But here's the situation. It's easy to kind of muddy the waters with all that and to suggest that every conspiracy is a baseless fantasy. And I think that's a dangerous notion. Because I think what we get with the Kennedy assassination is I really believe that there's facts of conspiracy. I think that's what Americans continue to see. The facts of conspiracy that we can't seem to get past. And it's important to look at this situation that, the Kennedy assassination is an event that is a seminal event in American history, because I think we almost had in 1963 this naive attitude that Americans kind of trusted their government, trusted their innocence. That's not all bad. To be able to trust the people, that they're Americans, they're going to do the right thing. And if the Warren Commission said that, that's what my dad's attitude was. Hey, the Warren Commission said it, Jerry Ford said it's good enough for me. I believe in these people. But after that, things started to change. The Vietnam War happened. The deception involved with that. Watergate, right? You know the story. So there's that problem of trust and thinking Americans in terms of how they view their politicians or leaders right up to date, right? We know that. The post-World War II advent of the so-called national security state. I mentioned that word earlier, national security. You know, it's crazy that it's, you know, what does that mean? And it actually goes back into the National Security Act. It's the validation of secrecy in America, or that our government can, for the reasons of national security, not tell you everything, right? Or maybe lie to you. I mean, if we want to be cynical about it, plausible deniability is a CIA term about, well, you know, if we can give you a story that's believable enough, then the public will accept it, then we'll move on. But again, those things, well, they don't hold up. It's interesting that and I don't know this. I've heard this. Out the accuracy of it, that Henry Kissinger visited Trump the day when he was supposed to make the decision, you know, release the documents on the 26th of October. One of the guys who came and talked to Trump at the last minute about national security, the CIA did too, the FBI. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and ballyhoo Trump by any means, but he had an idea that he was going to put it all out there. Then all of a sudden, he didn't. We're still waiting. Okay? So, most but not all the documents, maybe the most sensitive documents, remain behind, I think. And I think I pretty well covered that, and that's an article that came up. All right, let's move on here. Okay. So what about the media? What's their position? How have they missed the boat on the Kennedy story? We can talk about criticizing media, you know, fake news thing, what's truth, what's not. If they, in fact, missed the story on the Kennedy assassination, I think there are multiple reasons here. I think, first of all, to go there, to suggest that, you know, there was a conspiracy or an inside job in the assassination of President Kennedy, how damaging would that be to our institutions? You know, the desire just to kind of stay away then. And then again, the whole thing about not want to be associated with conspiracy, because it's a, you know, it can make an end to your political career, possibly. You know, I would make the argument that if any politician today just flat out came out and said, I believe there was a conspiracy in the assassination of JFK and the whatever, the CIA or mob when he was involved, it might mean the end of their political career, because there would be so much backlash. You're a fringe conspiracy nut. That's the problem we have in terms of getting to the bottom of this thing, I think, at this point. And then there's the reality of what the CIA did in the 1960s. We have something called Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA actually recruited hundreds of what they called media assets. It was an undermining of the free press and our democracy to go out and speak what the CIA wanted to be told, especially about the Warren Commission, about the Kennedy assassination and everything else, to project a propaganda. It's disturbing, but it happened. And here's an example of this kind. I'm trying to show you things that came out recently. I'm not this old man. This is another thing. I saw this, the Associated Press here. I don't know if you can read it that well, but it says, latest JFK files say no evidence found in the CIA linked to Oswald. Really? If you actually read the article, it would say, well, there was a whole bunch of redactions. In other words, a whole bunch of things were blanked out of the new documents. Yet they're already making the summation, there's no evidence. What if the evidence was taken away from us before, you know, that just kind of thing with the media is, you know, you can complain a lot about that, right, on all the circumstances. Okay. These are some of the questions I've always dealt with over the years, you know, that frustrate me a little bit about misconceptions. Someone usually says this to me like 5 times a week. Well, we'll probably never know what happened. Really? My argument would be is that we really know a lot about what happened. We just need to look, and we need to put it together. And if you're paying attention, you know, you can see things and you can discern for yourself. And then the other thing is that someone would have talked by now. My goodness, there's been so many people who talked about this thing. You know, if you want to examine the credibility of those folks and maybe discount what they say, but there's been a whole lot of folks that have talked about this in a lot of different ways. For instance, we deal with this one a lot. I mean, this one was probably as explosive as any. We'll look at this later. E. Howard Hunt, you recognize the name. The former Watergate burglar. He's also a longtime CIA spook. Shortly before his death in 2007, he made a deathbed confession. It was on audio tape. I know his son. Everything was recorded. You can hear it. It's even been reported in the major newspapers like the Boston Globe. And he basically talked about a big event in Dallas that he participated in, and he named other names, people in the CIA. He named Lyndon Johnson. Well, we can get to that later. So, do you want to believe a guy when he's on his deathbed, and he's obviously a top CIA guy? I mean, maybe he was just making it up, but maybe he wasn't. This came out 2 days before the assassination, or excuse me, 2 days after the assassination. This is one of the documents that were released. You probably saw it if you were paying attention. It was one of the more explosive things, if you want to call it that came out here within the last couple of weeks, that J. Edgar Hoover said, basically, 48 hours after the assassination, the public must be satisfied that Oswald acted alone. Now, let's take a little deeper dive into that. Some of you might know that he's not the only one that actually said it. The Attorney General for Lyndon Johnson, Nick Cassavell, also made the same comment. Bill Moyers, who's still alive, who was one of Johnson's boys, they were all circulating. It was a kind of a group speak that was going on within immediately. This spin, called spin, talking points, group speak, I call that in sociology. Sociology students, look it up again. Where a converging opinion right away. I'm trying to pay attention to the news. Chris Matthews on MSNBC, he's definitely an anti-conspiracy guy for whatever reasons. He comes on and he says, "Well, man, Hoover did a good thing there. He's proud of him because he's trying to squelch those conspiracy theories by making this statement right away." I had a conversation with a lady I know real well, who's been about 20 years older. 20 years old at the time of the assassination, very intelligent lady. She goes, David, we were all in shock. There were no conspiracy theories. There wasn't any highly developed conspiracy theories 48 hours after the assassination. There was no need for Hoover to throw this cover story out, or whatever you want to call it, just to squelch false theories. So, I think that there's a significance to that as it came out here. Okay, well, maybe, so let's do this. Some of this is review for some of you folks, some of it's not, but some, as I said, some of you may not know. So, what is the official version? Official version in that of what happened in Dallas. And I've tried to summarize, obviously circling around what the Warren Commission did, which was appointed by Lyndon Johnson. A group of these individuals were brought together to decide and determine what happened in Dallas. There was obviously no trial. Lee Harvey Oswald was shot 48 hours by Jack Ruby afterwards, as I told you about that. And that final conclusion was that Lee Harvey Oswald, shooting from the Texas School Book Depository from above and beyond the president's motorcade, fired 3 shots, one that missed, one that caused a total of 7 total wounds in Kennedy and Governor Connally. Of course, you know what that's all about. Maybe Connally was sitting in the front seat of the president, and finally a shot inflicted that fatal head wound of the president. A limited time frame was established by the Zapruder film, which we'll watch, and only 3 spent shells were found laying neatly on the floor, not spontaneous like what a real gun would do. And so the time frame, anywhere from 6.5 to 9 seconds, some people try to stretch that out. So if there's just going to be one person, you've got to keep it to 3 shots. Whether that's 1963 or 2017. If you want it to be one guy doing this, you've only got 3 shots by any standard. Okay? And that's how the Warren Commission played it. Well, we can use my fancy pointer here first thing. Okay. course, this is where Oswald was supposed to be, the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. The motorcade goes around Houston, slows down at this hairpin turn, and that violated Secret Service rules for the most part. And supposedly Oswald took these 3 shots. Okay? Now, we've got some real problems here. Okay? If all the 3 shots came from behind. And we'll come back to this. Let's go ahead and go forward with some of those problems, and I'll come back to your diagram here. Okay? What are some of those problems? Well, a multitude of witnesses said that shots came from the front. Now, there have been also, some people said they heard, did they hear echoes? Were they deceived by some? Was there some sort of mass psychosis or hallucination going on in Dealey Plaza? Anywhere from 36 to 53 to 64 witnesses. I don't know. There's a lot of people that saw that and debate that thing, that believe shots came from the front. Okay, there's that. Senator Yarborough was in the second car with LBJ, right in the second car, smelled gunpowder. So did police officers. If the only shots came from the 6th floor, well, we don't have to think, how could they, whoops, I don't want that. How could they have smelled gunpowder at street level? Okay? A lot of questions. Okay, let's go back to that chart. Now, among those people that saw something different, well, there's Gene Hill standing right here. Within a few feet, said shots came from the front. Jim Newman said shots, a veteran, came right over my head. This is, of course, that whole grassy knoll area right here. Okay, I'm just throwing a few out. And then there's S.M. Holland, man. This guy had a stage view of what was going on. It's like he's in the balcony here on the triple underpass. If you go to Dallas, you can go, first place you need, you just go walk over that triple underpass. You can see pretty much everything. Well, let's see what he's got to say. This interview was done in 1964. They say talk to people early on.
Mr. Holland, on November 22nd, where were you?
November the 22nd, I was standing on top of the triple underpass, waiting for the parade and the president's car. I arrived about 11:45 or close to noon.
S.M. Holland's a good old boy. I'm telling you.
2 policemen was talking to me and one of them asked me if I would come back up there and identify the people that had any business or had a right to be up there.
They would be railroad employees.
They'd be railroad employees, and I told him I would.
And what was your position with the railroad?
Track and signal supervisor for the Union Terminal Railroad. I put in 41 years of railroad service in the signal department.
Did you look in any particular direction when you heard the shots?
Yes, I looked over to where I thought the shot came from. And I saw a puff of smoke still lingering underneath the trees in front of the wooden fence. The report sounded like it came from behind the wooden fence. And a policeman towed his motorcycle down in the middle of the street and run up the embankment with his pistol drawn. He was running toward that particular spot. And also another motorcycle policeman right behind him tried to ride up the embankment on his motorcycle, and it turned over about halfway up the embankment.
It's very accurate. All these things.
And he got out, got off his motorcycle, and let it lay in there and run on over to the fence with his gun in his hand.
Where do you think the shots came from?
Well, I know where that third shot came from.
Where did that shot come from?
Behind the picket fence.
Is there any
Close to the little plaza.
Is there any doubt in your mind that that shot came from behind?
There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt whatsoever in my mind in the statement that I made in the sheriff's office immediately after the shooting, and the statement that I made to the Warren Commission. And I made it very plain there was no doubt in my mind what there was definitely a shot parked behind that picket fence. I made it plain to the Warren Commission, and I think I made the same statement in the sheriff's office. It was a forced shot.
Okay. Well, do you think he's lying? Because he's got to be. If it was just Oswald, he's got to be lying. He's got to be making that up. He's got to be hallucinating. He and 50 other people. So here's the thing. I mean, and I'm going to give you some more stuff that would reinforce that too. Is that I think part of the problem is, I mean, I'm not here to satisfy your, so you can sleep at night and say, well, yeah, it was, you know, like you see that a lot in the media. Well, it was Oswald alone after all. I'm not here to tell you that. I'm not here to debate it. I think it's beyond debate. I think it's a slam dunk that there was something else, something more sinister in Dallas. Now, you can argue with me on that. We can go there, but I just, you know, these things are just so impossible to ignore, and we're just getting started. I mean, let's go on. Let's the gun, the Mannlicher Carcano was a World War I bolt-action rifle. It took 1.5 seconds, the minimum, to recycle. It had a misaligned scope. So if Oswald's going to make the shots he was supposed to make, he had to be aiming here and hit here. You had to be, I don't know, what, you'd have a misaligned scope. You better not put it on a target. I would think that. People, more than one people, including Robert McNeil, who became a famous PBS broadcaster, was on the scene, said, look, I heard bang, bang. A lot of people did. How could it be bang, bang? Shots right. You know, Oswald did not have an automatic or a semi-automatic weapon. If people heard shots right on top of each other, it couldn't have been Oswald. The Italian Army did a study on the weapon, which was a World War vintage Italian Army weapon, and the Italians often said that was the weapon that lost in World War I. They did a study and said it would take a minimum of 18 to 20 seconds to get 3 shots off. Not the 6.5 seconds or 9, I keep throwing those numbers that some people try to establish based upon what they see on the Zapruder film. We'll look at that. Okay? All right, well, I want to give you some new stuff. Okay? Mix some new stuff in with the old stuff here. This is a pretty important document. It's not exactly new. A researcher found it in the new documents, but some of the new documents were really old documents released a long time ago. A guy a great researcher named Ed Tatro said, Dave, I looked at this in 1977 and actually wrote an essay about it. It just came out from someone else. It's very significant, though. It's a memo written by the FBI about the actual ammunition contributed to Oswald's weapon. You know, the 6.5 millimeter, whatever it is. I didn't get that right. But the ammunition supposedly used in Dealey Plaza. And here's the problem. The ammunition was traced back to Western Cartridge Company, East Halton, Illinois. That's where it was originated at, where it was made. But a close-up of this, you'll find something here that, okay, it was made by who? The United States Marine Corps. Well, Oswald was a Marine. Okay. But then the FBI agent here basically said, the interesting thing, we'll get back here. Hit the wrong button. Says the interesting thing about this order is that it is for an ammunition which does not fit and cannot be fired in any Marine weapons. Then the FBI agent goes on to say, this gives rise to the obvious speculation that it is a contract for ammunition placed by the CIA with Western under a United States Marine Corps cover. Wow, you actually get the term cover story in a document. I'd say that's pretty significant. That just came out this week. Okay? All right, I got you. Get my, sure I'm going the right direction. Okay, here's something else that came in. You know, I'll get back to some other things here too. I mean, the thing about Oswald and the Soviet Union, okay? You know, and that's somehow, we know Lee Harvey Oswald went to the Soviet Union. He came back under some very mysterious circumstances. We're going to get to that tonight, hopefully, if I can keep things going. But the suggestion out there that, based upon some files that were released, that maybe the Soviets sent Oswald to kill the president. There's been Newsweek, others have thrown this thing out there. And I just think honestly, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's regurgitated disinformation. Again, I'm picking on the CIA, but a lot of that stuff was attributed to the CIA at the time and was dismissed.